Coming up on the Best of the Paul Finebaum Show podcast, we talk to Mike Slive about his time as SEC Commissioner. Many coaches and athletic directors visit with us as well, including Nick Saban and Jeremy Foley. And Andy Staples thinks the Big Ten's success is just beginning. It's the Best of the Finebaum Show podcast, and it starts right now.
This is the Best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
The beach in Florida on a late spring day, and looks stormy. People are back on there, but about an hour ago, right before we were set to come on the air, those clouds were you see the clouds that rolled past here on that screen for those of you who are watching. For those of you who aren't, they were dark and windy, and it moved us inside. I was really looking forward to being on the beach. Obviously, you got the call that we would be on the beach based on this shirt.
Right, and then somebody walked in and says, "Well, you would not believe the storm that's going on outside." So nice to see you at a Plan B.
I had just a shirt on, and I grabbed a jacket because TV, you want to look the part.
Professional.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Tony Barnhart with us. Tony, we mentioned a moment ago about you having covered this event for a very long time, and what's going on here behind us?
Well, I mean, really, these SEC meetings are about Commissioner Slive and his 13-year tenure. I had a chance to sit down with him at length yesterday and really talk about it, and it's an amazing run, and we'll be talking more about it as the week goes on. But when people ask kind of what's going on, I know people have probably asked you about the satellite camps and the graduate transfer rule and all that. And really, Paul, it's those two issues are about a larger philosophical discussion, and that is, does the SEC want to operate within rules that are different than what the other NCAA institutions have to operate under? And that's when we talk to Nick Saban and a bunch of coaches today, that's what's going to be discussed in these meetings here.
How important are those issues?
I don't think they're very important. I think the satellite camp has much to do about nothing. I think the coaches don't want to do it, but Jim Harbaugh, they don't want you to do it either.
Right.
And so they're trying to get the NCAA to make the rule that nobody can do it, and I don't think that's going to happen. I just don't think it's very important. I really don't. And the graduate transfer rule, you're talking about a handful of kids every year. Again, I don't think it's that big a deal.
So, I mean, and there are a lot of headlines because this is the time of the year when coaches are available. You won't see a lot of these folks until Hoover in mid-July. But it doesn't seem, Tony, that there are a lot of really big burning issues outside of who's going to win.
Well, who's going to win? But the SEC network is online. All of the TV contracts are online. We'll keep debating the 9-game conference game issue, but I don't see us.
And that is interesting. You mentioned it was 2 years ago at this hotel where the SEC network had just been announced. There was a lot of conversation about what would happen. A year ago, there was nervousness. I mean, they were flat. I ran into athletic director after athletic director saying, "Are we going to get distribution?" And before the network launched last August, it all happened. The SEC network it's hard to miss it because ESPN has about 50 employees on every street corner here, but it has already been declared a major success. Am I correct?
No, you're absolutely correct. When I asked Commissioner Slive about it yesterday, it has exceeded everyone's expectations. And in terms of the distribution, the number of events that we've been able to put on the SEC network, I think everybody's going to be thrilled. And I don't know this for sure, but I think when the financials come in, I think everybody's going to be pleased as well.
Yeah, and that's going to be one of the biggest stories, and not to break news that hasn't broken, but the speculation is pretty rampant about Friday when the numbers are released. And I know you talked to him yesterday, and but my guess is Commissioner Slive is going to ride out on a white horse.
Well, when you think about the fact that in his 13 years, the amount of money distributed has gone from $95 million to well over $300 million, and I think there'll be a very nice bump when they see the numbers on Friday. When you combine the financials with everything else he's done, his legacy is very secure.
Yeah, and there will be a lot of speculation. I realize this show is, from a television standpoint, is being aired on the SEC network. We both work for them, so for those at the Columbia School of Journalism, you can do whatever you want with this. I'm in full disclosure. We're transparent, but there will be a lot of speculation on the impact the networks launched last August, only 9 months on, will have on that bottom line, and some will predict or at least analyze a great deal.
Well, think about this, Paul. Not only the SEC network, but the college football playoff has come online, and I've seen some of those figures. The difference in postseason football because of the playoff is about $200 million.
Yeah.
And so when you get whatever the SEC's chunk of that's going to be, and it should be considerable, that bottom line number, that plus the SEC network, is going to be pretty substantial.
In talking to Commissioner Slive, I know he has been very reflective. This is it for him, although he will remain a part of this league for a long time. What struck you the most, other than the end?
Well, Paul, you know how proud he is of the diversity numbers and what he's been able to do along those lines. He talked about the hiring of Sylvester Croom as a monumental event, not a sports event, but a historic event. The way that his people changed the compliance structure of the SEC. The SEC had some real compliance issues when he came on board, and now about a month after he leaves, I think the last school will go off probation. I think those things mean a great deal to him, and the fact that the SEC network did get launched. But I think those two issues, compliance and the diversity issue, are things that sort of hit home to me when we talked.
Yeah, and those are not exciting issues to talk about for the average fan, but they're extremely important in his tenure. I know while you were here Thursday and Friday, you gave some of your predictions out. Some of the people with us now may not have been able to watch at least your pick for the SEC.
I had Alabama winning the West, but I qualified that by saying it could be Auburn. It could just as easily be Auburn. I just think Alabama is a little bit more of a known quantity defensively.
In spite of what Colin Cowherd said today.
You know, is Colin up to his old tricks again?
Colin must be. Well, I actually know what he's up to, but I'll say.
Well, it moves when you criticize Alabama, it moves the needle, no doubt. But no, I've got Alabama ever so slightly winning the West, Auburn second, and 3 through 7 you can throw a blanket over them. It's all the same team. The SEC West, Paul, is as balanced as I've ever seen it, 1 through 7. And it's going to be must-see TV. Over in the East, I picked Georgia to win simply because 4 out of 5 offensive linemen and a very deep stable of running backs with Nick Chubb, and the defense is going to be better second year under Jeremy Pruitt than they were a year ago. But Georgia's got to play Alabama and Auburn on the other side.
That's true. I mean, they don't. I mean, they always play Auburn, but playing Alabama is
that October 3rd game with Georgia and Alabama and Athens. That will be.
Yeah, you have pretty strong ties to not only that community but to the state. It seems from a distance that is the game of the year right now. And man, these games always don't turn out to be, but that's the one we're looking at.
Well, that's a benchmark game, but you know what? Every time Georgia plays South Carolina and Steve Spurrier, that's a benchmark game because he makes it a benchmark game. But I think that's an important game for Georgia. If they're going to win the East, that's a game they probably need to win.
Tony Barnhart talking to us about the Southeastern Conference. Tony, I think of Tennessee, I think of Arkansas as those two buzz schools. That can be good. It can also be dangerous.
It can be very dangerous. First of all, Tennessee, from a talent standpoint, there's no. You and I talked before. If they were stock, you'd buy because all the leading economic indicators are pointing in the right direction. That's a far cry from winning the games on the field.
Yeah.
It's a different mindset going from hoping to be 6-6 and going to a bowl to you thinking that you've got a chance to win the division. How does Tennessee handle it with a young team? Same goes for Arkansas. I mean, nobody wanted to play them at the end of last season, but they were still 2-6 in the division, in the conference. So they've got to translate that into wins. But again, I think Arkansas is a team that's headed in the right direction.
Yeah, I had a nice chat with Coach Bielema last night, and I love the guy, but he's won 2 conference games, and I've never seen more attention paid for that.
Right. Well, we're always looking for who's this year's Auburn from a year ago, who's this year's Mississippi State from a year ago, and we try to identify those teams, and that's a reasonable guess, Tennessee and Arkansas, but they've still got to prove it.
Auburn's coming off of the weirdest 8-5 season because most people still thought they were a great team at times, not at the end, but certainly at worst a really good team that happened to face the most difficult schedule in the country. Not as difficult this year, but but then someone will say, yeah, but they were coming off of a national championship appearance. Well, I mean, let's be honest, that no team has ever had as many things go right for them as that Auburn team in 2013.
No, I mean you had the kick six and the miracle play against Georgia, and now both of those games are now at home, and that makes.
But
a
on
difference.
top of that, you won Mississippi State in the last play. You were fortunate at A&M with Manziel getting hurt nearly the last play, and there was another game along there somewhere. I mean, that was a season that's been hashed out. But what I'm trying to ask is, what do we know about Gus Malzahn right now?
Well, what we know is that their defense was not very good last year, and I still maintain that you don't have to be great on defense, but when you run an up-tempo offense like Malzahn, you're going to have your defense on the field more plays. Ask Nick Saban.
Mm-hmm.
His defense was on the field for something like 170, 80, 90 more plays than it was a year ago, and you've got to factor that in.
Yeah.
You've got to have depth to compensate for that. And last year, I mean, I've known Ellis Johnson a long time, but the defense was just horrible. They couldn't stop anybody. And they had 620 yards against Alabama and still got beat. They scored 44 and still got beat. That can't happen.
Finally, this league, 2 years ago, it owned college football. Even last year, there was a little bit of uneasiness, but the loss to me against Ohio State shattered not so much the psyche of the league, but it put this league in a spot where it hasn't been. Ohio State will be the preseason favorite if they win again, and we're sitting here hopefully next year with jobs in this league. What are we going to be saying?
Well, I always try to be careful not to make any broad strokes on one season or even a couple of seasons. But the fact of the matter is, Auburn was within 13 seconds of winning the national championship against Florida State. Certainly could have won that game. Alabama got beat against Ohio State. There's no getting around that. You knew the Big Ten was going to get better. It had to. And now with Urban Meyer, now with James Franklin and the people they've got in play, and I think they're now Harbaugh's there. Michigan's going to come back. But I still think the SEC, week in and week out, when you have to play at Auburn and then turn around and maybe play at Alabama, or just the cumulative thing of this league and how tough it is, I still think it's the best league in the country.
I agree with you completely, but if you don't win the championship,
well, that opens the door to your rivals.
Yeah.
So just win.
We got a few of them out there.
One or two.
Tony Barnhart, nice enough to drop by. Always a great conversation.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
We're back in Destin live with Alabama head coach Nick Saban. And, Coach, I was thinking, I probably shouldn't say this too loudly, if there was ever a week for a husband and a father to go to the beach and get away from a family, it would be this week, since your daughter's getting married this weekend.
Well, I told everybody earlier today we got lots of issues. I caught a tarpon last night, so that was a good thing. Down in the pass, almost 180 pounds. Grandbaby got tube spinners this morning, so she's doing okay. And then we got a wedding this weekend, and everybody here wants to talk about SEC football. So we have a life too.
So yeah, I would imagine though you're getting updates on the wedding, which I'm sure you.
I found out kind of early in the process. The wedding was a lot about Kristen, but it was even more about Miss Terry. So I've kind of stayed on the sidelines and allowed her to be the head coach, and I'm just one of the assistants on this one.
I know on a personal level, obviously your son was married. You had the grandchild, which is a big deal, but this is your girl.
Oh yeah, but we feel very blessed that young man that actually grew up with Kristen. They rode the bus together when they were 5 years old in East Lansing, Michigan. Met up again at the Notre Dame National Championship game, so they've been dating ever since. So it's a great family. He's a fine young man, so we're very happy for her. Very proud of her, but we're very happy for her as well.
I don't want to bury the lead, the tarpon. Can you? Usually we ask you much more complex questions than that, but so what happened?
Well, we went tarpon fishing last night, and unusual that 5 people in the boat caught 5 fish. Everybody caught a fish, so we were happy about it. It was good.
I've heard some preliminary reports. It was quite a battle, though.
Quite a battle. I actually threw me up against the boat. I'm a 180-pound fish now, and those things fight, so it was fun.
I know one of your mantras was the fourth quarter and finishing, so I guess you finished this one.
Finished this one, but it is one of the things that, we've been very concerned about is how we finished the last 2 seasons, and certainly, hopefully, want to do a better job of that this year, with our team. Hopefully, we can focus on the team and get our players committed. There's a lot of distractions for players, late in the season when you have a lot of guys that are going to get drafted, a lot of juniors that are thinking about coming out early for the draft, a lot of pressure relative to the expectations that they have for where you are. So this is something that we need to do a better job of managing so that we have a better chance to compete at a higher level and finish strong.
Well, I know after the 13th season, you seemed perplexed, and a lot was made out of it. You dedicated to correct those, and it looked like you had for the most part. And it's awkward to say you didn't finish when you won the SEC championship and were number 1 in the country, but I guess it's the way the final game ended. Just won't seem to go away.
We just didn't seem like we played really well against Ohio State. We got ahead 21-6 in the game. It seemed like we got a little relief syndrome, and they were a very, very good team. And when you play really good teams, they're going to compete for 60 minutes in the game, and you got to match them play for play, down in and down out. And we just didn't do a very good job of that. And we turned the ball over, and that was a big issue in the game. When we had an opportunity to score late in the game, we turned it over and gave them a turnover for a score. So it was disappointing. But last year's team was kind of unique. If you would have said to me at the beginning of the season, this team would be the number 1 team going into the playoff, I would say, I'm not sure it's one of our better teams. But after we got there, I was disappointed that we didn't really even do as well as I thought we should have or could have, and I take responsibility for that. But something happened between the SEC championship game and the playoff game, and in terms of our karma, and we just lost our mojo a little bit, and I think it affected how we played.
I know you referenced the playoff versus the bowls a couple of days ago. Obviously, you knew what you had. You've been there before, but was there something different about this?
Well, I think the thing that was a little different about this is you were at a bowl game, but you were playing in a playoff. But, I think what I said the other day was a little misinterpreted because it was my concern way back when we started the playoff thing as to how the playoff would affect the other bowl games, because bowl games have created a lot of positive self-gratification for a lot of college football players for a lot of years. It's the reward for having a good season. Well, there's always been a lot of interest, a lot of fan interest. People went to the games. It was a very positive venue in a lot of ways, and I said this, way back before the playoff ever occurred. How is the playoff going to affect all the other bowl games? Well, there weren't as many people that went to the bowl games. So my statement was really not about a criticism of the playoff. It was really about how can we better preserve the integrity of the bowl system along with the playoff so that we can continue to have this positive self-gratification for a lot of college players.
You've also had some strong opinions on the satellite camps, other aspects. You even referenced today the SEC. You were concerned the SEC would become a farm system, so to speak, for the NFL.
Well, I respect all the rules that we have in the SEC relative to we have transfer rule that sometimes doesn't let guys transfer into here that go other places. And, we're moving legislation forward that may not let guys transfer in the league if they have issues at one SEC school as opposed to going to another. And, my concern is that we don't have a lot of rules in the SEC that are different than the other 5 major conferences that are going to create a little bit of a competitive disadvantage for us being able to get the same players that everybody else can get. Now, I do think that we should be an example and have a high standard, of integrity and, in terms of the way we conduct our business in this league. But I also think we don't need to have rules in this league that are not going to be. I think, it used to be about winning the SEC. Now we have a playoff, and it's about winning the national championship. I mean, we won the SEC last year, and I'm sitting here apologizing for how we finished. So, so we need to have a little more global approach in terms of the other 5 conferences and our conference. And our conference has always been a leader, I think, in, setting an example in college football, and I'd love to continue to do that, whether it's personal behavior, academic support for players graduating and get an education and have a better chance to be successful in life, as well as the quality of ball that we play, and the fans that we have, and how interested and passionate they are in what we do.
Certainly, I mean, you did well with the BCS. I mean, that goes without saying with 4 national championships. You raised some concerns about the system versus the bowls. Do you like the 4-team playoff, or would you like to expand it?
Well, I like the 4-team playoff this year. I really haven't thought a lot about. I think if we expand it, I think it's going to further diminish the value of bowl games. I'm not sure that the playoff games should be a part of bowl games.
Okay, that's your biggest issue.
I think my issue is don't go to the Sugar Bowl to play a playoff game. I mean, if we're going to have a playoff game, go play a playoff game.
Right.
Kind of like they do the championship game. It's not a bowl game now. Or maybe it can be a bowl game, but to take a team there and stay for a week in a bowl atmosphere, but yet with the importance of a playoff game, there's something that doesn't quite fit right in all that I'm not sure it's a tough management.
We appreciate your time very much. Thank you, Coach.
Paul. Well, I appreciate you. We miss you a little bit in Alabama, but I guess you're making the national scene now. But I tell you what, you and your buddy, Marcus Spears, I mean, I hear more people talk about the combination of, what I would consider the odd couple between the two of you, but you do a great job.
No, we've you know him, you recruited him, and he starred for you, but he's become like, I wouldn't call him a baby brother, but he's as close to one as I've ever had.
Well, you all do a great job.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Our next guest, considered the premier athletic director in the SEC. He is Jeremy Foley, and certainly a busy man over these last, since I've seen you last.
Very busy.
Good to have you on, Jeremy. It's always great. And we've talked many times about things the changes of your program. I think last summer, as we sat in the studio and talked about the very difficult decision on football, and then you have one of the legendary basketball coaches in modern SEC history, and he decides to go to the NBA.
Well, we figured out here, Paul, recently that the only constant in our business is change. Obviously, the situation with our football program and Will was very, very difficult. I'll discuss that with you because we cared so much about him. And,
sure.
I really thought Billy Donovan would be our coach forever. And not that we ever took him for granted, but just our relationship, his relationship with the University of Florida, and I know the way he felt about Gainesville. But he got an opportunity that he thought was right timing for him in his life. So we wish him the best, and we'll miss him every single day. But obviously excited about Mike White coming on board as well.
Yeah, no, very impressed with him. And Jeremy, you've set the template. Athletic directors, some have been caught off guard in the past, but the bottom line is that you always have to anticipate. I know you've spoken about this. How do you go through that process, no matter who the coach is, whether it's Billy Donovan or Will Muschamp, which everyone is speculating on, in terms of what happens next?
Well, being prepared is part of it. You got to have your antenna up. Certainly with football last fall, we knew certain things had to happen. I think we discussed about we needed to, show the improvement we all wanted, and didn't think it was there. But as the fall is progressing, you're kind of getting a sense for that. And candidly, we've been hearing some rumors about Oklahoma City and maybe Billy. The antenna went through the roof. And then people always said to me this search went very quickly, but it really didn't. We probably had a couple of weeks to start researching coaches and figure out where we wanted to go. So it's just a matter of being prepared, not trying to get caught with your guard down. It's the key to it.
It's always easy for someone on my side to be critical of you and say, hey, you should have done this, you should have done that. But it's well known that I agreed with your decision to retain Will 2 years ago, and everyone knows what happens. But you don't seem to me there's no way you could have been as successful or be as successful as you are to go back and second guess. But do you ever stop and wonder about that whole process now that it's over and it clearly didn't work?
Well, we discussed it the other day, and sometimes you're sitting in the chair, you're going to make decisions that don't work.
Yeah.
We all wish we were batting 1,000. It doesn't work out. Second guessing is probably not the right part, but certainly when we went into the coaching search for Coach Mack, we evaluated what we did before. We hired Will very, very quickly. And certainly, I'm the most surprised guy in the world that didn't work out as we envisioned. But so, again, we don't second guess. We self-evaluate because what we did didn't work. So what can we do differently? Who else do we include? What more information did we need? How many more people do we need to call? All those type of things. So we did some things differently. I don't, the decision to retain Will after, he was 4-8, never second guess that. I mean, he just was 11-1, and I just think you're talking about business integrity and doing the right things. That would have been a knee-jerk reaction, right? Looking back on it, do I wish I had done that differently? No. That was the right thing. But when we went through the whole search process this time, what did we do last time that didn't work? And that's what we did. We reevaluated, self-evaluated more than second-guessed.
On that front, when Will left, certainly I commented as we were broadcasting the news conference, I'd never heard anyone leaving in that circumstance being praised more by you, by players, and obviously by your president. He went to Auburn, and I realized there was some backlash after that. Players went with him, not all, but some. Can you talk a little about what he was allowed to do, what he couldn't do? Because that certainly seemed to be a big story around.
Yeah, again, Will had a contract with the University of Florida. We terminated his contract.
Right. In
the contract, there was, he was compensated for the years he wasn't coaching. But as far as going, he was allowed to make a living, right? Auburn was recruiting some of those players to begin with. I get that was a story. Right. I think it's a one-year story. Will Muschamp's a very good football coach and a good friend, and I wish him nothing but the best. And again, I think more was made out of that than people understanding it was a contractual relationship. We lived up to our terms of the contract. He was free to go now make a living at Auburn, and we wish him the best, except when we're playing him.
Right. Jim McElwain certainly has inherited a difficult situation at certain positions. Your thoughts on where he is right now, and where do you see this going? You hopefully very well, but
yeah, I think it'll go very, very well. And mostly I say that not because I'm supposed to say that, it's because I've watched him since December. The way he's come in. The way he recruited, first of all, our class was, supposed to be in the, in the tank,
right.
And he took one and made it a very decent one. I see the way he recruits every single day. I love the staff he's put together, Paul. Again, very thoughtful, very deliberate. Mac's a competitor, and I'll guarantee he's not happy with certain pieces of his program right now, but, you don't see him panic. You don't see him, woe is me. You see a pro. You see a guy who comes to work every single day. Very, very popular inside the building, treats people the right way. Good guy, and has a track record. One thing Will didn't have, calling it like it is, when I hired him, a great defensive coordinator, but not a track record as a head coach. I can point to a guy who took over a program that was 3-9, 3-9, 3-9, and 3 years later he has them 10-2. I can point to a guy who built that program. That's what he's going to have to do for us. Nobody likes the word patience in this business, but also you don't build a program by being impatient. And so what I see in him is a guy that's very much in control, very much has a plan. Obviously, he's learned from one of the all-time greats in Nick Saban, among other great coaches he's been around. So it's going to build slowly at our place, but it's going to build very, very well, in my opinion.
We pointed out a couple of things that have not been exemplary, but a couple of things have been lately, and that's women's softball and baseball. I know you're proud of that.
Yeah, very proud. Our softball team's been to Oklahoma City. It's their 7th time in the last 8 years. Obviously, they're defending national champions. They're going in the number 1 seed. A lot of pressure. I'm very proud of them, and very proud of this league. This league, it's the Southeastern Conference Tournament in Oklahoma City.
Right.
A lot of great SEC teams in the World Series, and obviously our baseball program to go into, lose the first game and come out of the loser's bracket to win the conference tournament this past weekend. And obviously, when you're talking baseball around the country, you're talking the best when you're in this league. So when in just a short window, but when you can come out on top over a 4 or 5 day period, that's a sense of accomplishment because you're beating some really good teams to get there. Really good teams.
Jeremy, always good to see you.
Always good to see you, Paul. Thanks for having me.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
That is Andy Staples you hear. Welcome back to all of you to our program. We're joined by Sports Illustrated. For those wondering what we were talking about as you rejoined us, I was debating whether to renew my SI, and Andy told me to wait. The football phone becomes part of the pre-fall.
Exactly.
Renewal.
Exactly. Forget the pullover. Forget the beach blanket, the towels. No, you want the football phone.
Okay. I'll consider. I mean, it's a lot of money.
Well, you bring in a lot of money for the SEC.
Okay.
You could ask for a raise. I mean, we're going to find out Friday how much you're bringing in.
I could ask to include that in part of the next deal. In SI, it's already get ESPN magazine free.
Is that part of your deal?
You.
That's a great. I don't even get SI for free. I need your agent, Paul. I got to fire mine. Oh, wait, I don't have one. I'll fire myself.
I can hook you up.
Okay.
Easily. Andy, we've talked a lot about these meetings, and since I don't want to hear any more about satellite camps, and
it is the dumbest argument possibly in the history of all the dumb college football arguments. Satellite camps.
Yeah.
We don't want you to come down and have a camp in Atlanta. Well, guess what? You don't have the votes. If you're Nick Saban, Mark Richt, of course you want to protect your turf. You don't have the votes. You're going to have to get rid of your own dumb rule, which means you can have satellite camps.
Yeah.
So Alabama will have a satellite camp in South Florida. Great. What do you do? Michigan will continue to have satellite camps in Atlanta. You will still have to shovel snow in Michigan. That is still something that we'll have to overcome in recruiting when they're trying to recruit kids in Georgia.
Let's talk a little bit about the perception. I mean, certainly most people around here are flag wavers for the SEC. I've been there. I've done that. But things are changing. And the last 2 years have been pretty dramatic shifts. And I just interviewed someone who said, well, the SEC is still the best league in the country. Well, it is week in, week out. But it wasn't once we hit January 1st last year.
No. It was a Big Ten team was the best team in the country. I don't think anybody in their right mind could argue that fact. Ohio State was the best team in the country at the end of the season. The Big Ten is trending up. Now, they'll say, oh, the bottom of the Big Ten isn't as good as, say, the middle to the bottom of the SEC. Well, so what? We only look at the top of these leagues anyway. Yeah. And there's some really good football being played in the Big Ten. There's some great football being played in the Pac-12. The top of the Big 12 is good. The top of the ACC, Clemson is going to be pretty good. Sure. Florida State may take a little step back, but they'll still be good. I think that's good for college football. The SEC dominating, I'm sure, made everybody upstairs in the AD meeting real happy. But in terms of a healthy sport, well, everybody else is kind of feeling like an also-ran. And now I think everybody's going in every league in the Power 5 feeling, hey, we got a shot. Because I could give you a team from every conference in the Power 5 that I would feel comfortable saying these guys got a national title shot.
And, listen, we haven't even played the season yet, but 2 seasons have gone by without a title, and I don't care how you look at it. Those are the facts. Urban Meyer and Ohio State is the favorite this year, and if it happens again, what does it mean to the SEC?
Nothing. They won 7 in a row.
So that's the key.
You can't win every year.
Okay.
It doesn't worry. This stuff is all cyclical. People think I've lost my mind when I tell them about 2006. I was a beat writer for the Tampa Tribune. I was covering Florida. And I remember the week of the SEC championship game, I got so many emails from Florida fans saying, ESPN's so biased toward the Big Ten. Because everybody was saying they should just have an Ohio State-Michigan rematch in the national title game. And ESPN's biased toward the Big Ten. When are they ever going to give the SEC some credit? Then you switch to 5 years later, and ESPN's biased toward the SEC, and they never give the Big Ten any credit. All this stuff works its way back around. And right now, the Big Ten is having a moment, and I think that moment's going to last a while. I think Urban Meyer set Ohio State up well. I think Mark D'Antonio continues to do a great job at Michigan State. I'm very excited to see what Jim Harbaugh does at Michigan because as a sports writer, he provides endless amounts of material.
Oh, yeah. Andy, as far as the season, clearly the national storylines are Ohio State, the resurgence of Michigan State, Oregon's not going anywhere. You mentioned Clemson. In the SEC, it seems like there's just not even an exciting debate between Auburn and Alabama. The game is in Auburn, obviously, but how do you see that?
Oh, gosh, we got so long before that, and the West is stacked.
Yeah.
I know it sounds cliche, and people from the fans of the other leagues hate to hear it. Oh, no, Arkansas is not really. No, Arkansas was pretty darn good at the end of last season, and they were the last place team in the West. And that league, that side of the league is fantastic. The East, not so much. But the West, I mean, I could see Ole Miss coming out of there. I could see Auburn coming out of there. I could see Alabama coming out of there. If Texas A&M can play some defense, they're going to be a really tough out. If Arkansas continues to get better the way they have been, they're going to beat people they're not supposed to beat. I don't know.
Is it really? I mean, Auburn and Alabama are the favorites going in, but
I don't know that you can say that there is a favorite.
But it really is.
I guess you would have to say Auburn probably if we're assuming that Will Muschamp will bring the kind of improvement on defense that we've seen him bring at other places.
Right.
So if that happens, but now remember, he's never worked with an up-tempo offense like this before.
Right.
They tried to go up-tempo at Florida a little bit last year, but it's not like what Gus Malzahn does.
You mentioned Florida, and we'll talk to Jim McElwain later on. I mean, no one is really expecting a lot.
No.
Occasionally you'll see a good prediction, but
because Jim McElwain is walking around Gainesville, seeing people my size and saying, "Do you have eligibility left? Because I need you to play offensive line for me."
Do you?
I do not, but there are tapes in his football facility that prove how terrible I am at blocking people. So I'm already out.
I saw him earlier, and maybe it's just his personality. I mean, upbeat guy. He doesn't seem to be hearing, or if he does, he's not acknowledging the same thing we're hearing. And
Year one, Paul. He's playing with house money.
Okay.
If they lose, well, that's just how far they needed to come. And he inherited a terrible situation with that offensive line. Terrible. And I'm a firm believer that you are as good as your offensive line is. And Ohio State last year, prime example. Their offensive line was fantastic. They were fantastic. Florida State the last couple of years. Florida needs to get to that point again. And they had some great lines when they were winning national titles. Right now, they've got very little experience coming back to them, relying on some freshmen to play. I mean, shoot, Martez Ivey, when he steps on campus, they're going to probably say, hey, we'd like you to contribute if you can. And that's a lot to ask of a true freshman when you're 18-year-old kid playing as 22-year-old men at that size. It's not the same as being a running back and jumping right in. It just isn't. You need to be able to develop physically, and you see it occasionally. Alabama had Cam Robinson last year start. Florida State had Rod Smith starting at left tackle about midway through the season. But to be able to throw true freshmen in there and have them contribute on the offensive line is still very rare, and that's what Florida's going to need.
We talked with someone earlier about South Carolina. On paper, they don't look a lot better than last year, although last year they looked pretty good on paper going into the season.
Yeah, and that's a case of we weren't paying attention to how much they were losing on defense. We weren't paying attention to how much Jadeveon Clowney affected everything.
Sure.
I think that had a lot to do with it, and they were just painfully young in the secondary, painfully young on the defensive line. They should be a little better. John Hoke and Steve Spurrier have worked together before, but we really don't know. We don't know what their quarterback situation is going to look like. Does Lorenzo Nunez come in and beat out the veteran guys who are, as Barrett was saying earlier, not really veterans because they haven't gotten to play much either. So I think they're kind of a mystery. You don't discount the head ball coach. If you can win that many games at South Carolina, you are a bit of a miracle worker. But they have got to get better defensively. And, we don't really know what John Hoke has to work with right now.
Andy Staples, nice enough to join us from Sports Illustrated. Not too late to renew your subscription.
That's right.
You get
we need all up we can get.
You get the free Andy Staples cookbook.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Matt is next in Columbia, Missouri. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Paul, how you doing?
I'm well. Thank you for the call.
Thank you. I've just never, Mizzou never gets any play anywhere in this conference. And, you know, we won the West the last 2 years and got some strong defense coming in and everything like this. But I keep hearing, you know, constantly about these other teams. But, you know, I listen to your show every day, and I never hear anything about Mizzou. And I'll be honest, I think, you know, if Alabama is going to beat them in the championship this year, I think Alabama's going to get beat.
Well, let me say this. You bring up an interesting and a consistent question on here and elsewhere about Missouri. Missouri, in spite of what it's done under Gary Pinkel the last 2 years, has not moved up all that much in respect. Certainly more than it did.
Well, won the West the last 2 years. That was like.
But here's the problem with that. And I take nothing away from Gary Pinkel. I think he's one of the top 3 coaches in the SEC right now. But neither appearance in the championship game has been very convincing or compelling. There's always that outlier game. I wouldn't say there was in 13, because I thought the overtime loss to South Carolina was unfortunate, but still it was against one of the better teams in the SEC. Last year, we all know there were 2 or 3 games that made no sense whatsoever. I think Missouri still. I think there's still some doubters about Missouri, and we all know the facts, just like you do. But I think this is another opportunity for Missouri to shut these so-called experts up. And
I do too. But I'm just hoping that, you know, we never whine like the Alabama fans.
No, well,
every day I watch this list of this show, and all I hear is about saving this, saving that, and we're like, hey, man, you know.
Well, let me. I tell you what. Let me ask the next caller about that. Larry is next up. Larry, do you think Alabama fans whine?
I think what?
Do you think our friend from Missouri a minute ago said, "I hope we never get like the Alabama fans who call up every day and whine."
We got something to whine about. What is Missouri whining about? Getting their ass run over? I mean, at least when we whine, I mean, damn, like my mom used to say, I'll give you something to cry about. That's what Saban does. He gives us something to cry about, dude. Listen, Mizzou, just do something.
Well, Larry, you say that, but I don't know. Did you hear our Colin Cowherd excerpt a few minutes ago?
What was his name?
Colin Cowherd.
Yeah, it was a jack. You know, I won't even give him a jack. That man just.
He said, I don't know if we have it available, but if we don't, he said Alabama will have its worst team. Okay, Larry, do me a favor. Stop for just a second, and let's listen to Colin Cowherd earlier today on ESPN Radio.
This is Nick Saban's worst football team in like 5 years. They return 2 offensive starters. They don't know who their quarterback is. Their secondary, despite Nick's brilliant secondary coaching, lost their best player, and I don't love it, and they have to replace their 3 best wide receivers. When you're bad at quarterback, you're not a special football team. Also, in their conference on their schedule, LSU, Auburn, Arkansas, A&M, and Tennessee will all be better. Phyllis, I am sorry, Alabama is not a top 5 team this year.
What about it, Larry?
The only thing he got right in that whole thing was when he said, I'm sorry. We know you're sorry. You're sorry that a whirlpool on the bottom of the ocean, Jack. I mean, this guy is a trip machine. I mean, he goes and throwing this crap out there, like you said, Paul Finebaum. He's like Chicken Little. The sky's falling. And I'm with you on this now, Finebaum. You load up with me. Hey, he just keeps doing this to get some little ray of sunshine on his head. But I'll tell you something. Alabama is going to roll. And you know that, Finebaum, T-Town. And don't let Big Ten John get burned up down there in Florida. You hear me?
I hear you.
Okay, hey, I went to Hooters yesterday and got free wings Memorial Day for veterans.
Well, congratulations, and thank you for your service, Larry.
Man, I wish you could have been there. Roll the entire Paul.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Let me introduce you to someone who does not need an introduction. Mike Slive, the SEC Commissioner. Commissioner,
Good to see you again, and I know as you walk around here these next couple of days, I'm sure a lot of reflection.
Yeah, Paul, you know, I went, and each time I go in, I just met with the football coaches and the men's and women's basketball coaches, and they gave me an agenda when I went in, and I took the agenda and I turned it over and said, I'm here. I just want to say thank you.
How great.
To all of you, I mean, all these coaches, what they've done for the league is really phenomenal. So it's a bit of an emotional week for us, even though it's business as usual for people. And so Liz and I and our family are here, and we're sort of celebrating, 13 years that I've told the coaches were the 13 best years of my life.
There are not many people in intercollegiate athletics who get to set their goodbye. They're usually thanked very quickly and rushed out. So you've had an opportunity to, and for some reason this fly seems to really be saying goodbye as well. It's an officially licensed fly, though, so no one be too upset.
Well, if it's carrying our logo, I'll be okay, but if it's not, I don't want them around.
We've talked obviously a lot lately. We'll talk about that another day. But I did find it remarkable, and we talked about it last year here. But this is the first year the SEC Network has been up and running during the meetings, and it's certainly providing entertainment for a few young people who can't be outside on the beach.
And I'm glad you've had our coaches on and our athletic directors on. This is all part of the celebration, Paul, because we are celebrating the network.
Right.
For those fans who don't know this, I've said it over and over again that the launch of the network was the most successful launch of any cable network in the history of cable television, not limited to sports. And so, our student athletes love it, the coaches love it. So we're celebrating that, and having you here and having you on is just a frosting on the cake.
I wanted to ask you because you've had some memorable meetings down here with a lot of people, but particularly the football coaches, and one in particular several years ago. But what was it like inside that room today? I mean, these are the faces of this league.
Yeah. Well, we had a brief conversation about some of the philosophy. Times change, and change is hard, and so we had a few philosophical conversations about the foundation and the underlying rationale for change. But then I really just wanted to say thank you to them. I mean, they've been very instrumental in creating what I've called the golden age, and they were very, very generous in their thoughts about me. And when I left the room, one couldn't leave the room without being moved by the reaction of the coaches. It was quite moving.
I know on that front, it's never easy to move on, even though you'll still have an involvement. But later this week, the Thursday night is the banquet, and I know that's going to be particularly moving.
Yeah, it is. As a matter of fact, somebody asked me if I had written my remarks for Thursday night, and I said yes, I've written them. But the real question is whether I can deliver them. Our Thursday night award banquet, we acknowledge our Scholar Athletes of the Year, and we say goodbye to a lot of folks. We have 3 presidents who are leaving, and I start out by talking about sitting in my yard, looking out at the view, and looking at Liz's garden and all that kind of thing, and then I do want to say thank you to everybody. It's a bit of a family affair, and it will be difficult. That'll be difficult for me to say what's in my heart.
And I know that you've given this a lot of thought, but as you get closer to that end date, you've been asked about the highlights of your career, and you've talked about it so often. But I would think it would be the personal relationships that would be the most difficult.
And that's what I'm finding today as I go through and meet with the different coaches groups and the other faculty reps and others and a couple more. That it is relationships. There is a uniqueness to this league, and I'm sure people outside the league, would be cynical about what I'm about to say, but there is a family element, and maybe the best way to explain it is that we have over 500 people here in Destin for our spring meetings, in addition to over 130 children. And that's, you and I've had a conversation about one day I was walking down the concourse at one of our football games, and I saw Grandma, Grandpa, Mom and Dad, and Dick and Jane, so to speak, And I just knew that in 10 years, Mom and Dad would be Grandma and Grandpa. Dick and Jane would be Mom and Dad. We'd have a new Dick and Jane, because that's how it works here. It's part of our DNA. It's part of our life. So we are truly a family, and that's what we really celebrate on Thursday night.
Not to move from such a serious subject to something mundane as the color of your sweater, but I always joke with you, because no matter I've been to many games and many press boxes with you, and you're never going to be accused of having school colors on, are you?
I can wear safely. I can wear green, and I can wear brown, and I can wear some black and some white. So as my daughter said, Dad, you're so boring. You're so boring. I said, honey, I'd rather be boring than make a mistake and offend anybody with the wrong colors.
And you've done it well. And I mentioned the audience earlier, and I won't get too deep into it, but I spent a little time with you last week, and actually a lot more than a little time. It was a lot. It was a lot. This is one of the most challenging interviews I think I've ever had, because there's not a question I haven't already asked you. But it was so remarkable to sit there, not only at your office, but at your home, and just listen to you reflect not only on the last 13 years, but your entire life and career. It's been quite remarkable.
Thank you, Paul. It's been, it's been one would think that I sort of planned it. I never planned anything, and to have ended up here and to have done this, and it's like all of us who are a little older, the only thing we really wish for, the only regret we all, many of us have and I have, is that my mom and dad can't see it.
No, that's and I do know quite a bit about both of them, spending as much time with you, and I agree. Because to hear what I have heard all day today, what we'll hear tomorrow and Thursday night and continuing is pretty remarkable.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much.
I will say this to you. The SEC under your tenure has won, you may know the number, I've lost track of national championships in every sport, but you've got a pretty good chance to win a few more before this thing's over with.
And somebody told me today that we've won 81 national championships since I've come, and that's a pretty fair number. That's a pretty fair number.
I mean, when you look at the bracket for just the women's softball, I mean, I know it's unbelievable.
Yeah, we have five out of the 8. Now that puts a little pressure on us. We should try to win one of those so we can do it. Like we won it last year too, and that's an interesting development. The way softball, we didn't have softball several years ago, and that the fact that in women's sports we paid the kind of attention to it, but put the kind of support behind it, and the result is that we're the best softball league in the country, and that's a credit to our folks. When we go back to equities and gender, and now it's something that we're very proud of.
I think it's also a credit that having been here many times, and 4, 5, 6 years ago, expansion was the issue, and when you first arrived here, the NCAA was the issue. That in your final SEC spring meetings, there really aren't many issues.
No, they're not.
Which is good.
They're not. It's delightful. It's delightful. I'm going to go and have a little press conference in a few minutes after we finish, and I'm going to try to figure out what might be newsworthy, because the good news for us is actually tonight there isn't a lot that's really newsworthy.
No, it is remarkable, and I know that you don't want this to be about you, but I've spoken to Jay Jacobs, was here earlier, someone who spoke adoringly of you, and he said this is really, there's not a lot of news, but for us this is about Commissioner Slive.
Oh, thank you, Paul. It's very nice of Jay.
But I don't envy you going in there, because I am part of the media, and they'll try to get you to say something. They will not be as respectful of your end as the athletic directors.
Well, since it's going to be my last week with the media, I might have appropriate responses for them. So.
And I'll say this, because the media it can be a double-edged sword, but but I would say your relationship with the media has been pretty nice.
Yeah, thank you. I've enjoyed it. I really have, and they've been fair, and they've been, I've enjoyed the relationships. We go back to what you said earlier. It's about relationships.
Well, I know one thing. This will not be the last conversation I have with you. As sad as I am, it may be the last during this event, and I will certainly miss our conversations at media days as you go through 60 or 70, maybe 100. Yeah. But Commissioner, thank you so much, and we'll see you very soon.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it very much.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast. ESPN Radio, bringing you directly to the biggest events in sports.
Center field, well hit, Hunter back, out of here!
From opening day of baseball,
throw to the plate, safe at the plate,
right through the World Series.
For the third time in 5 seasons, the San Francisco Giants are the champions of the baseball world.
Whether it's LeBron, Chris Paul, or Kevin Durant, when the NBA tips off, ESPN Radio is right there when a champion is crowned.
We have a new world champion. The San Antonio Spurs are the world champions.
And when the magic of bowl season arrives, ESPN Radio is your home for the new college football playoff.
The college football playoff first national champion, the Ohio State Buckeyes.
The biggest events in sports can be found right here on ESPN Radio. This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Delighted to be joined by Jay Jacobs, the athletic director at Auburn University. And of all the things that I never thought I would open this conversation talking to you about, it's women's softball and men's baseball, because these were programs that were not really heavy on the radar screen for Auburn, but under your leadership and some really good decisions, the women are in the national championships and the men are knocking on the door.
Yes, it's a lot of fun. When you hire great coaches, you have some fun things that can happen, Paul. And Clint Myers, to come to Auburn, only been there 2 years, and we win our first super regional and go to the Women's College Softball World Series for the first time ever. It's great. It's a lot of fun. And certainly our baseball team under Sonny Galloway, we're back to the NCAA, back to Florida State again for regional, but that's good. That's sort of like our home away from home with regional since 2010. So, got to get through that regional and try to pop out and play a super regional, which we're paired with the University of Florida. So we'd go there for the super regional, assuming they win, and I suspect they would if we could beat Florida State and come out of there. But yes, it's a lot of fun right now. The softball team's going to Oklahoma City yesterday, and we play against LSU on Thursday at 1:30.
And gymnastics has taken a dramatic step forward. Obviously, we talked about Bruce, and it goes under your basic guide. And a lot of people doubted your want to pull the trigger over the past, but you have emerged as an athletic director. A lot of people point to now because you made some very difficult and correct decisions.
Well, that's part of this job, and I've been in it now 11 years, and you learn a lot going through what you do as an SEC AD, and I've learned a lot and I've grown a lot, but I've learned from those things, my history and my experiences, and I feel better about my position and being an AD in this league better than I ever have. And certainly, hiring great coaches is one thing that is, I'm determined to do. And you mentioned gymnastics. To go to the Super Six for the first time ever was great for Jeff Graben, our gymnastics program, and then certainly hiring Bruce Pearl. I'm just not going to settle.
Right.
Maybe at one time, our history's been let's pick the best person we think we can get. I'm not there. I'm for let's go find the best possible coach we can that represents what we're all about, the Auburn family all about, somebody that I'd want my children to play for, and they can win. And those people are out there, and by Clint Myers and Bruce Pearl and Gus Malzahn and on and on. Nick Clonard, our men's golf coach. All those programs, we've got a chance to be successful because they're good people and they're great coaches.
Certainly, you as an athletic director had to learn on the job. There's no template, even though you were part of that athletic department. Can you pinpoint a moment when maybe you altered your philosophy a little bit?
There's probably not one moment, Paul, But I believe that as a CEO in any business you're in, you're always learning. And if you're not, you probably need to go find something else to do. Because in this business, probably not unlike other businesses, but this one evolves day to day because we have such great fanatics, fans, and people have high expectations. No one has any higher than I do. But, in hiring coaches and doing what's right, sometimes you do take a step back and think, okay, with this particular hire that didn't go as well as we all thought it would, even though it may have been a popular hire or an unpopular hire, you look back and you reflect and you think about, okay, what should we do differently moving forward? And so you learn from those experiences just like you would in anything else. And, in picking the great coaches is a big part of it. And having the support staff around them. The other thing is the point that I mentioned earlier to answer your question, Paul, is that I'm not going to settle. And I'm going to go after the best people we can possibly get to lead our student athletes, to get them a great education, and to win ball games. So that's what I'm all about. That's what we're going to continue to do.
And people, whether it's CEO of a Fortune 500 company or an athletic director, hiring the right people, it doesn't look easy, but it's I don't know what the percentages are in success, but I doubt they're really that high when you consider smart people end up getting the wrong coaches so often.
They do, and a couple of things play into that, I think, with any business, and particularly athletics. One is that because someone has had success at another place doesn't necessarily mean they're going to have success at your place, because your place is different. There are different dynamics to it. I'm not saying that it's better or worse. I'm saying it's just different. So to take a person, a man or a woman, and put them in as a head coach at your place because they've had success or lack of at another place doesn't guarantee success or failure at your place. So it's all about knowing your environment and knowing what gives you the best chance to be successful. And probably to answer your question, Paul, about my philosophy and what may have changed, is that's probably what I've learned, is that you can't take the best necessarily in one particular area and put them into a certain program and say they're going to be the best at this program, because you have to build the entire program, and that's what we're committed to do here at home. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to have my people do. We're going to have the right support around all of our coaches and all of our students so they can get a quality education and have a chance to impact their community once they graduate from Auburn.
Which brings me to Will Muschamp. Certainly, there's always buzz around an Auburn football season, but he has helped solve the wounds a little bit of last year. Even though Auburn played easily the toughest schedule in the country, everyone is so upbeat. The expectations are so high. Talk about your role in helping facilitate that, because it wasn't an easy decision to make because it involved money and coordination.
Yeah, well, it may have appeared not to be easy, but when Gus came to me and said, we want to hire Will, I said, do whatever's necessary to get him. Because Will had been at Auburn before. I knew Will. I knew his wife and his two boys, and I knew he was a great fit for Auburn. And we, even since my days of playing, we were always very good on defense. We won by playing defensive football. And because of the way Gus runs his offense, we'd gotten away from that for whatever reason, okay? And hired some great defensive coordinators, but they just didn't work out, like maybe some of the reasons we were talking about earlier, Paul. But when Gus said we had a chance to hire Will, I said, do whatever's necessary to get him here. And that's what we did. And it's been great. You mentioned Bruce earlier. Bruce has lifted the enthusiasm of the entire athletics department and had a losing record. But because of his enthusiasm, because of his record, and because of his passion, he's lifted the entire athletics department. Clint Myers has done the same thing in softball, and Will's done the same thing in football. So once you get that momentum going, it gives you a good chance to be successful. It doesn't guarantee it, but when you have people around that are really good at what they do, and they love what they're doing, and they care about each other and care about their students, you have a chance to be successful. That's what Will has done. He's a great defensive mind, and it's a great place for him right now. I suspect that one day have an opportunity to become a head coach again somewhere. But right now we're very proud to have him. Hope we get to keep him for a while.
Yeah, and he's a coach that I can't remember the specifics, but everyone wanted him to be a head coach years ago. He chose to go to or stay at Texas. Right. Ultimately went to Florida, and it didn't work out. Who knows why? Right. But no one has written him off yet either as a head coach.
They haven't. They haven't, because he is such a hard worker, such a brilliant defensive-minded coach. And so that's where you look for maybe where the next head coach comes from, is who is the best as an offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator. Right. You can move up to that spot. And for whatever reason, it didn't work at Florida for him as far as wins and losses go, but he went into a real tough situation. But he's back now at Auburn. We're glad to have him.
I bet. Speaking of respect and admiration. I know how close you are. We talked about it not long after he announced he was stepping down, maybe even that same day with Mike Slive. This is his final official act, most people believe, as the SEC commissioner, and I know from a both professionally and a personal standpoint that touches you greatly.
It does. He is Commissioner Slive has become a very dear friend of mine, and he's a mentor for me, not only in this business but personally. And I'm proud that he's able to leave this profession, to retire from here on his own. What he has done for this conference is immeasurable. It's really daunting to think about the vision that he had. This network itself, you know, people forget the challenges we went through to get to this. Is this really the best thing to do? Because others chose not to do this.
Right.
But he had the vision and the wisdom and the conviction to do this. And we get to see that every day. And being chair of the SEC ADs, I get to sit next to him every meeting, and he gets to tell me things in my ear about certain dynamics of the room and what's going on. It's really a blessing. And from a personal standpoint, my wife Angie and I, we think the world of he and his family. And it's good to know that I still have him on speed dial, regardless of what his title is.
He told me, I was with him a couple of days last week, and he told me the story you've heard, and you were in the meeting. Or no, actually you weren't, but when you first came on board, maybe you're right. You've been how long? 11?
I'm in my 11th year.
Okay, I think right before it was right after he got here.
Okay.
He said there was a contentious issue, and it was a 7-5 vote, and you've heard the story. And he was very disappointed. And when he saw Doug Dickey a couple of weeks later at Knoxville, he said, "Doug, this really frustrated me that it was a 7-5 vote." He said, "Mike, 7-5 in this league is 12-zip," and he knew then that he was going to make it.
Yeah, that's right. He is. The thing about him is that he walks softly, but he carries a really, really big stick. And a lot of people don't see that because he is so gentle and such a gentleman. Going about his business, but he knows what's best, and all of us have pretty much learned to catch on to that. But we will miss him as our leader, but we'll never forget him as our friend, and because that's how he feels about us. We love him, and I love him, and I look forward to keeping our relationship going regardless.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Jim McElwain. For a man who a lot of conversation about his football team isn't that upbeat. I saw you earlier today, Coach. You seem upbeat, but that's just your personality, I guess.
No, I tell you what, we're excited about the way things are going. We've got a ton of good things happening on campus, and what a great opportunity to be at a great place like Florida.
Yeah, certainly. No job is easy. You knew that going in. That's what you wanted. This is a major SEC head coaching position, but talk about coming out of spring, getting ready, not quite yet, but not too far away. The media and the fan base certainly have concentrated on your quarterback situation.
Right. We got a couple guys on campus battled their tails off during spring, and we had a great competition, and it was a lot of fun. We got to kind of see what's going to happen as their leadership develops over the summer. I think when we get back in August, we'll be able to kind of tell which one of those guys kind of took control. And, what we're excited about it from the standpoint of, we'll get an opportunity to work with, a couple of those really good young guys that have a lot of upside. And, we're not going to reinvent the wheel. We've got to figure out what they do best and what the people around them do best, and then go ahead and keep molding it that way.
There's always a learning curve for a new head coach, and we've seen some fail. But to me, and this is just from a little bit of a distance, you've already gone through that. You've been at Colorado State. You know what it's like to be a head coach now. Is that fair?
Yeah, it is. And what a great opportunity that was. People there were outstanding. They took a chance on me, and we had an opportunity to build something pretty special in a place that just keeps getting a little bit better. And that was exciting. And yet there were a lot of things that you learn along the ways, too, that maybe this isn't the way to do it. Maybe there's another way. And I think the key is always consistently evolving in everything that you do and staying current, always looking to get better and never stay the same. And that's what we're trying to do at Florida right now.
You're linked to Nick Saban, which isn't a bad thing.
No, that's a good thing. I'll take that.
Although, I mean, you certainly have been around other coaches. It seems like Nick Saban's the only person you've ever known.
That's right.
But I wonder what it was like today, walking in that meeting. As I'll say this, quote unquote, as his equal, as an SEC head coach.
Well, I tell you, I don't coming to this. You as an assistant in sitting in those meetings, and coach would come back and give a report, about kind of what went on and the different things that way. But myself being able to go sit in that room, listen to the quality.
That's a good
of
room
people.
to be in.
No, I mean, quality guys, guys that understand. They've been in it. A lot of great ideas, and it really it's one of those things I kind of enjoy because you're able to kind of develop some different thought on some things and different perspectives, and that was kind of pretty awesome in there, to be honest with you.
I had a guy last year, no names mentioned, who told me, I said, what was it like being in there for the first time? He said, I was not intimidated by those guys one bit. I was the same as those 14. Of course, he didn't win a conference game last year, so I don't know if it really, whether maybe he was a little overconfident. But I'm sure. I mean, you and not only being in the league, you've competed against those guys. But
I don't know. I mean, growing up in Montana, you learned you better not be intimidated by anybody, and yet at the same time, pick your spots, kind of get a feel for exactly the dynamics, I guess, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you I invented anything in there, So, but at the same time, I thought it was a great experience.
Was there anything that surprised you a little bit, just listening to these guys? Everyone's giving an opinion on something.
I think that there's some really good thought, and what I mean by that, guys that are concerned in the big picture. Mm-hmm. And that's what I love about these guys. They're concerned in the big picture about the welfare of our players, our student athletes, about getting a college education, about becoming better for the rest of their life because of the experience they're having at their schools. And, when you get like-minded people like that, there's a lot of good things that come out of it. And sometimes some of the legislation may be a little short-sighted, really, but at the end of the day, it's about helping these young men grow, and that's pretty cool.
Coach, it's always a pleasure.
Hey, I appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
McElwain.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
For those who can't see us right now, Scott from Cigars is going to cook Coach Jones Bananas Foster. I don't know what that has to do with the University of Tennessee, but it's good. So,
looking forward to it.
Coach, you live it every day. We just watch from a little bit of a distance, but the buzz about Tennessee football, and I can speak for someone who's watched Tennessee for a long time. I can never remember it this intense. You've embraced this. You're not running away. You want this to be what the case is and what the story is at Tennessee.
Well, you would know, first and foremost, that's the University of Tennessee. We're surrounded by a great, passionate fan base. We have very high standards and expectations. However, as the caretaker of Tennessee football, we still have a long way to go in terms of our overall depth as a football program, but we're making strides every single day. Exceptionally proud of all of our players and our coaches. When you look at having a 2.85 GPA for this past semester, highest in the history of Tennessee football. We had 51 individuals of a 3.0 or above. We're really doing some very good things, and again, we're still going to be a very young football team, but it is very exciting and Rocky Top.
And there are some people who want to caution. I mean, you just said that we're not there yet. Where are you in this process?
Well, we're still going through the rebuilding process, and really it's evidenced by a lot of true freshmen that are still in the conversation piece for Team 119, and we need to get to a point where they're not heavily involved in those conversations, particularly in the defensive front. And you really work on your deficiencies through the recruiting process, but our players have worked exceptionally hard, and learning how to win is a process. That's the most difficult thing to do in sport, and I really believe our football team really learned how to win this past year.
Certainly, people can interpret and analyze buzz in many different ways. It just seems to me that, Tennessee football has always been this great product, so to speak, not to diminish it,
But in recent years, it's gotten so far off the radar screen that I know a lot of young people, Coach, who don't quite understand and appreciate that Tennessee used to be with Alabama, the two brand names in the SEC.
You are exactly right, and it started with recruiting individuals that have an affinity for the University of Tennessee, and they understand the high standards, the high expectations that we have.
A fly from Alabama,
yes, I tell you what, when we started talking about Alabama, the flies started flying around. But, we want individuals that embrace that, and it's an opportunity for them to leave their legacy, getting Tennessee football back to its rightful place among the elite of college football. But that doesn't happen overnight. You don't rebuild a football program in 2 or 3 years. It takes time because you have to develop depth and you have to continue to recruit.
When you look at a season, we look at games. I wonder what does a head football coach look at as he looks at that slate of games?
Well, you try to follow the process, and the goal for us is become a better football team, a better football program, minute by minute, hour by hour, and day by day. And you can never get sidetracked, and it's just focusing in basically on the bullseye of each and every day. But also you have a plan. It's just like last year. Our football team was the youngest football team in the country, playing arguably the toughest schedule in the country. I knew that if we could just continue to work and grind day in and day out, we'd like our body of work at the end of the season, and that came true to form.
Go ahead, Scott.
How about this? Definitely a Tennessee fan here. There we are. Go Vols.
Well, thank you. This. How many calories do you think are in this?
Is this the first time you've ever eaten live on set?
I have never.
Now you just need a napkin.
That is actually pretty good. Would someone like this? Pete Waters, our boss here, taking it away.
That is outstanding.
It really is. Very sweet. Very sweet. Anyway, hopefully that will be a harbinger of good things to come. Coach, it's always great to see you.
Always great seeing you, and go Vols.
You bet.
Thank you for all you do for college football.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.
Really good to see you.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Saw Coach Freeze only about 12 hours ago. You were heading out to play golf, and I understand the course was good. Good to you.
It was a fun morning. Please, thank you so much, Coach Jones. I love it.
I gave you a new spoon.
A new spoon, so I can try it. Thank you so much.
Coach,
we really get along in this
Coach Jones, if this gig doesn't work out at Knoxville, I think you got a career as pretty good. A communal. I bet Saban would not have tasted that without having somebody taste it with a Tennessee coach or an Ole Miss coach.
No, man.
It's great to see you.
And you too, Paul, as always. Yeah, the golf was fun this morning. Coach Stoops and Coach Spurr and Coach Miles and I got our annual round in together. It was a lot of fun.
I know you play with Gus because you're old friends, but when you bring in a couple other guys, is it usually just about golf, or do you get off on other tangents?
No, we try to just stay around golf and having fun. We really didn't talk any agenda, any things that are on the agenda for this conference we're at, but we really just enjoyed being together and seeing who could hit the best shots.
No doubt. Coach, this is that time of the year when this is a benchmark. You wrap up here, and the next time we see you, you're not disappearing, but we'll see you in July, and the football season is upon us. It's 100 days to the first kickoff, and probably didn't make your day to think about that, did it?
I kind of want to finish summer camps and really get away for a couple of weeks, which we will. And spend some time with our family and friends and enjoy some downtime. But it will be here before we know it, and I'll be really excited when that time comes to get into fall camp and get our kids. Hopefully I will get good reports that they've done really well with our strength coaches in the June and July terms, because that's vital. And I think strength staffs are right up there. In importance with the coaching staff because of the time they spend with them in these months preparing.
Coach, well, everyone wants to look forward. You're coming off of an historic season in Ole Miss, and I still shake my head when you think about you beat Alabama, you beat Mississippi State. That's usually enough.
Coach Jones at Tennessee.
Yeah, well, I was trying to ignore that.
Got them too.
But I mean, just for an O-line Mississippi Ole Miss fan, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi State in one season is, but it still felt like because the injuries, the end of the season, that some came up just a little short.
Well, I'm a big picture guy. I've said that before, probably on your show, and I try not to let the highs get too high and the lows get too low. I try to stay somewhere in the middle ground and really try to stay focused on the ultimate definition for success will be how our guys that I coach are doing 20 years from now, and that really does kind of keep me grounded. But there's no question that we were disappointed in the way we played in 2 out of the last 4 games. And then the other loss was just one of the most gut wrenching that we've ever had. That certainly changed our team some, but. You want to finish on a higher note than what we finished on, but when I look at where we are in just 3 short years, it's hard to ignore in my mind that we've made great progress and maybe are even a little ahead of schedule.
In terms of the upcoming season, and this is not the first, nor will it be the last time you're asked about the quarterback situation. Right. It's going to become a question you can't outrun.
Well, I'm going to break it on your show, Paul. I'm going to start all 3. I'm going to find a play that I can start all 3 so that I could go ahead and just tell everyone we're going to start all 3 the first game. But I do think it will play out in the early parts of the season. I've always said I don't mind playing 2, and you know that from following us, but I do believe you have to, when the time comes in the fourth quarter, you have to have a guy. And I think it will play out, but I'm optimistic we've got some good candidates for it.
Coach, in terms of the SEC, we've had some longtime SEC observers with us today, and it sounds like a cliche, but it really isn't. He said you could almost take a flyer on any of the 7 schools. It's that good and that competitive.
I've carried that flag since about midseason last year. And I just believe that all 7 teams are top 25 teams that could beat anyone on a given day. Of course, there's teams that we obviously can lose to, and we beat each other up. And at the end of the year, it won't be that way. But I do believe that the people that follow our league know that that's not too far from being very, very accurate, if not the truth totally, that all 7 of us could be top 25 teams.
There's no magic formula, but having been through the league a couple of times, and last year with clearly your best team, is there something that you've learned that you can apply to next year, because it becomes such a gauntlet?
Yeah.
If so, what is it?
Well, I have to really watch myself, and particularly next year is even going to be a greater challenge. Everyone only has 1 open week.
Right.
And if I could redo our schedule a little bit, there's some things I would do quite differently. But I really have to watch myself to not keep the gas pedal pressed every time the kids are around me, and be in that mindset of it's do or die this very minute. I mean, I've got to make sure that I have a couple guys that kind of help remind me and to enjoy the journey, make sure the kids know you're enjoying it. They'll enjoy it more also. And, you cross your fingers, you pray that you stay healthy, and this gauntlet we run through. But you can't control that. But you can control kind of the demeanor of the building when those kids come in, and I have to really pay attention to that.
Yes, speaking of enjoying that, I mean, you had one of the most historic wins in Ole Miss history, and I know I talked to you afterwards, and there's way too much going on, but now, forgetting whatever else happened, I mean, are there moments when you can look back and wow, that was pretty special, not only to your team but to the people that follow Ole Miss?
Well, that's probably what makes it most special to me is the fact that, I just came off the Rebel Road trip not too long ago, and, to see the joy when you would ask a group. I remember vividly telling them my first Rebel Road trip, look, I have no idea what our record's going to be, but I promise you that a reasonable expectation is for you to see our kids competing at a high level, and I want you to leave our stadium giddy over what you just saw. And I would say, I want to know in our 3 years if you left our stadium giddy. And without hesitation, everyone's hands go up and they want to talk about that win. So that was a great day for our football program, for our university, for our town, to have College Game Day there for the first time in school history. It all was hopefully a sign of what is a new normal.
No doubt. And a new season is upon you, of course, and unfortunately, two of those big wins were at home, and but you already know that.
Yeah. I just drove at the pace car at Talladega a few weeks back, and before I'm getting introduced, I'm standing back there with Ricky Stenhouse and Danica Patrick and Dale Jr. and some of those others. But I think Ricky was, Coach, you know you're fixing to get booed when you go out there. So, well, I'm kind of used to it in this state when we come in here, and we will have to go on the road to some of those teams we had big wins against, but everyone's got to do that. We'll have to get them ready.
We wish you well. Certainly, I know the summer is short, but a little bit of time, and
we'll have some time. We'll go fishing and play a little golf and hang out with the girls.
I'm glad you enjoyed the round today. It's getting a lot of buzz around this hotel.
Well, it was fun.
Well, thank you, Coach.
Thanks, Paul.
Good to see
Always
you.
Good. Thank you, man.
Coach Hugh Freeze, nice enough to join us as we have had quite an afternoon. The Ole Miss begins his fourth year as Ole Miss's head coach, and certainly coming off of the most memorable appearance. The offense clearly needs to step up. It struggled mightily down the stretch in two of those final three games, as Coach Freeze mentioned. It has been certainly a memorable day. We've taken the show many places over the years, and actually this show's only been on television for a year, but on radio for many more years. But this has been one of the most interesting days, the last 4 hours, having spoken to so many athletic directors, 3 or 4 in all, the commissioner of the SEC, Mike Slive, and a very emotional and a very poignant conversation with us today. He said something I'll never forget. He talked about all the accolades, the head coaches, the head football coaches cheering him on and paying homage, and he teared up when he talked about how he would have liked seen his parents see this day. And I think that speaks for all of us as someone ends a career, but few, and there'll be plenty more said about Commissioner Slive on this show, but just hearing that today was heartwarming.
Thank you for listening to the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast. Tune into the Paul Finebaum Show every day from 3 to 7 Eastern on the SEC Network or on the ESPN radio app.